Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Raw Men. This, I believe, is episode number 23. This one is a special done by request of the Secular Student Alliance. They want to do a promotion. They want me to show my support for their organization. I'll be happy to do so. And they wanted me to do that by interviewing one of their student activists. And they said that they would find someone that would be appropriate for me, and that they have. They've not only found an atheist activist, but they've also found one who, like myself, was a returning student. Born the same year as me, so we've got a little bit more on our even perspective. And this is Jim Naylor, is it?
Yes. Hi.
Jim Naylor, how do you do, sir? And before we continue on with your story, I would like to talk to Mark for just a moment. Can you make any announcements, please, Mark?
Yeah, I wanted to say we've had a few people ask about iTunes, and all you have to do is go to iTunes and search the Raw Men Podcast. It'll come up. There's actually two feeds right now. The one has a lot more activity on it. That's the one you should be following. The second one will be deleted soon, so do not get on board with that one because you will drop off into the ether. You can also listen to us on Spreaker, Spreaker.com/The Raw Men. And also, if you go to our website, theraw-men.com, you can find all those feeds, including a link to the Spreaker and the iTunes. Also, I want to say the Secular Student Alliance is very important to me. I'm glad that we have a guest on to talk about the Secular Student Alliance. The SSA is an affiliate of Be Seculars. If you go to besecular.com/SSA, anything you buy from that link, the Secular Student Alliance gets 50% of the profits. So check that out. I'm glad you're here, Jim. That's all I have for announcements.
Yeah, I also have a close connection to the Secular Student Alliance because I'm on their speakers roster, and I have done a minimum of 2 conferences or 2 presentations per year at their request. The last time was in Phoenix and Tucson, respectively, which I made into a motorcycle road trip just to make the most of it. So, Jim, what can you tell me about the Secular Student Alliance?
This is a great club. I've been with them for about a year and a half, and they founded in 2001 in Columbus, Ohio. They have chapters in not only the United States, but Africa, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And they are a founding member of the Secular Coalition for America. Now, they've really grown. When I was growing up, when I first went to college back in the 80s, there was a Campus Crusade for Christ and a lot of Christian-type organizations. There was no Secular Student Alliance until 2001. And check out the numbers that they've grown so far. In 2007, they had 80 groups across the country. Just in 5 years, in 2012, they had over 400 groups at colleges and community colleges and universities across the United States. So they've grown pretty fast. And it's a place for secular people to go and commune with each other and talk about secular values and the separation of church and state and other things.
When I listen to your voice, the way that you speak into that microphone, this is a very professional radio voice. You done any broadcasting, sir?
Yeah, I've been about 20 years in broadcasting. Started out at an awesome station here in Sacramento called KZAP, 98.5 KZAP, classic rock station from the underground radio days, even back in the 60s. And my last station was a few years back, KFBK in Sacramento, which is the Clear Channel affiliate with Rush Limbaugh and the news talk station. So quite a difference there of first and last stations for me. So, but now I'm back in school and part of the Secular Student Alliance Club. They welcome me regardless of my age. And studying music, I want to teach music to kids. So there you go, different career path.
And why did you choose a different career path? Why not radio?
I got cancer in 2011, so I was 48 years old and was diagnosed with fast-moving and aggressive prostate cancer, which when you get prostate cancer in your 40s or 30s, it's not the old man's disease that when you're in your 70s or 80s. It's fast-moving and aggressive. Frank Zappa died of prostate cancer at age 51. So it takes a lot of people every year. So my little pitch about the cancer is, if you know a guy in your 40s, if you've got a guy in your 40s, have him get that PSA test because it's a test for cancer, and it saved my life. So after that, I said, you know what? I want to do what I really want to do. This is a hard, stressful gig, and where has it led me in my life? It's led me to a lot of stress and ultimately cancer. So I'm gonna completely do a 180, and I went back to school and started studying music, and I want to teach music to kids now. So I'll be graduating here at the end of this year. So.
Oh, well, congratulations. Now, as far as being secular,
Yes.
what's your story there?
My story is after I went through cancer, for some reason it was important to me to be honest and to be truthful. And I became, I guess, an activist atheist at that point. I hear that a lot of people go the other way and become religious with a near death experience. For me, it was exactly the opposite. I became unreligious. I guess I went through maybe 25 years or so as an agnostic, but growing up as a Christian and a Buddhist, um, I became a born again Christian in my as a young child and until my mid 20s. So probably a good 20 years of laying on of hands and falling down and shaking and healing and casting out demons and all of that. So
When you do that whole speaking in tongues thing and the shaking of the hands and the falling down on the ground, I mean, I had the impression that the people that are doing that know that they are doing that.
I didn't have the gift of the tongues thing. My gift was the interpretation. I could hear somebody mumbling something like that, and for some reason, I thought I knew what it said. It was words from God, and I thought that I could interpret. Oh, it means this. Bam. Kind of like when you hear your cat talk. What's he? He's saying he wants to go outside. You get a picture like what you think it is, right?
Okay. All right. So what happened after that?
Well, um, I don't know. I just maybe became agnostic after a while. I think I wanted to have sex, and I go, let me put this religion thing on hold for a while and be 25 years old, and I
So
guess
that
I never really came back to it until. But I guess I thought it was true the whole time because I would argue with Jehovah's Witnesses when they would come to the door, talking about, Jesus is just a God. I would talk to him about the Word and how the Word was, John 1:14 and all of that. I guess I still believed until one day I saw Zeitgeist and went, you know what? They made it up. They freaking made it up. Now I see. Carlin's right. It's a scam. Good for them. Huzzah. Hooray for you. So,
okay. Well, I had a number of people ask me about Zeitgeist because I'd done a lot of research in comparative mythologies and so forth, and I said, well, there's very little about the movie that I can personally confirm. I can only confirm some portions of the very beginning, and then as you know, that movie was divided into three sections, and
oh, right.
one of those sections was the 9/11 truther thing, and then and that's the one that probably got the most outward reaction. I can't credit pretty much any of that movie. I wouldn't say that it was credible. There are a couple of things I can verify, but not more than that. So I mean, I wouldn't cite that. I wouldn't want to cite that as my reason, but fortunately, I do have a lot of other reasons. For me, the issue was that Dionysus, for example, known as Bacchus, the god of wine, often described himself as the vine and the fruit of the vine. I mean, and the same kinds of he gave like a half a dozen different definitions for himself that are the same things that the same terms that Jesus uses to describe himself, except that the myths attributed to Dionysus we know of were in hard copy and written down at least 5 or 6 centuries before Jesus' time. And where Jesus was able to pour wine into a vase and turn it upside down and pour water out, which is Penn and Teller do that trick too.
Hmm.
Dionysus did it a hell of a lot better because he had fountains in the earth that were producing wine instead of water. Now that's a hell of a trick.
He had it on tap, you see.
He had it on tap.
Wine on tap.
Exactly. So the idea that I had was, why would God make his son to be a cheap sequel to a human idea? And especially when the original version of that idea did it so much better than Jesus did it. Jesus is a cheap knockoff of Dionysus,
Right.
at least. And everything really that is attributed to Jesus had already been attributed to somebody else. And there are Christian scholars of the 1st and 2nd centuries who admit that. and admit that there's a reason that Jesus sounds exactly like the myths attributed to all these other gods. And one of the excuses was that, well, the devil knew that Jesus was going to come up, so he went back in time and he created these other people before Jesus would show up, so that it would confuse you. The lamest possible excuse imaginable, but it is still an admission that other godmen pre-existed Jesus, and that Christians knew it at the time. So my thought was that either Dionysus could turn water into wine just like Jesus could, or Jesus couldn't really do it either.
You know, you bring up some good points, and the thing about the zeitgeist and why I bring it up, it was the catalyst for me, but I don't recommend it as the catalyst for anybody, because from what I hear, there are a lot of mistakes in there about the other gods that Jesus is allegedly based off of. But it put some doubt. It made me want to research more. It made me think, why am I believing this? I've always believed it. I've been told that since I was a kid, but why? Now, it was, I guess, the inspiration, the prime mover to get me thinking beyond my teachings, beyond that which I already knew.
I've had about it, I agree that, especially some of the other stuff outside of the religious quotient of it, but the discussions I've had about it in general always seem to come back to, there's a lot of things in there that are unsubstantiated. There's a lot of things in there that are clearly not true, but if it starts a person down the path of asking questions, that only leads to one place, and that's disbelief. And although I don't want anyone to go down that path based on false premise, anything that gets someone questioning, there's a piece of it that I can accept and understand.
Right. So, Jim, you are with the Secular Student Alliance of Sacramento Silly
College. I'm sure it's been called that before.
Sacramento City. Let me see if I can get this correct. The Secular Student Alliance of Sacramento City College. And how did you become involved with them?
I just was walking to class one day and I saw a group with these shirts on, Ask an Atheist. And I walked up and I asked them how I could join their group. I knew exactly who they were. They were the secular group on campus, and there was no looking back. I knew, man, we're gonna do some great stuff, some fun stuff, and it's been awesome. I mean, Christians, religious people don't have a monopoly on getting together and getting some energy going and some great ideas and doing some good stuff.
Well, then that's going to be the next question I ask. What sort of stuff that you do that is, as you say, awesome?
Well, we do a lot of work. Kudos to our fearless faculty leader, Don Button, who brought in some great, just this last semester, we had Dan Barker come in and talk about the importance of the separation of church and state, and we did a little jamming. We didn't have a piano there, unfortunately, for Dan, but hopefully next time. And also there was a great debate that we had that was very well attended. In fact, probably 2/3 of the audience were Christian for this debate, and we filled up the entire room there at City College. And that was one of the dogma debates hosted by David Smalley with John Christie and David Fitzgerald. And they were talking about Jesus, Lord, or legend. And they both did a fantastic job, and that's available to watch on YouTube now as well.
Okay, and do you do any activism on your own?
Yeah, I've signed up for all of the. I only came out, I guess, a secular person maybe 2 or 3 years ago, openly secular. But now I love telling people I'm openly secular. You know, I guess a big thing for me was coming out on Facebook and telling people that I'm openly secular. And sometimes I wear this pin, the Atomic Atheist logo, and people ask about this from time to time. If you can see this.
The American Atheist, yes.
Yes, I tell them it's for science because critical thinking and evidence-based thinking are so important.
Yeah, I have that on the back of my truck, and I went into some little store, and somebody walked in from the parking lot asking what that meant, with a big smile on his face, and he thought maybe that I was into chemistry or something. And when I told him that I was a representative of American Atheists, he was very confused, even frightened.
Wow.
I don't know how to read that response. It's just, I mean, this was his face. I don't know how else. What might have been going through his head?
We frighten some people as well. We do this one with his Sacramento fan with Sacramento atheist Judy Saint. We go to the mall wearing these T-shirts, usually in pairs, and do Christmas shopping. And it's funny when they you can hear them say, "Atheists do Christmas shopping." I love the questions that we get when we're wearing the shirts, And it says, "Ask an atheist." So they come up and they say, "Wow, okay, what do we ask you? What do you want to know? Ask, go ahead." So it's kind of like an impromptu little thing, and some people are genuinely scared and think that we work for the devil, and they're gonna pray for us.
Okay, so now you started at both ends of this. I mean, so you in your early 20s, you were full-on believer, right? Not quite speaking in tongues, but you're doing the gyrations and things on the floor, and I guess Benny Hinn is knocking you over with his coat, and that kind of thing. So did you notice the thing that what do they call it? The Clergy Project. The Clergy Project has noted a trend that when people come out of belief, they don't just drop their religious beliefs and then go on as they were. They drop the religious belief, and then they also drop a lot of associated prejudices along with it. They tend to vote more liberally. They tend to be more tolerant. They're more inclusive, have a heightened appreciation for science, and so on. Would you say that you experienced anything like that yourself?
I would say in time all of those things happen with me for sure. I've said those things like it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Those things have come out of my mouth at one point in time. They don't need to get married. Why do they need to get married for? Now I'm 100% the opposite of that. Yes, I'm far more tolerant with my views on everybody and everything now. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing that being atheist has made us into so many of us made us into gay rights activists. Even when you're not gay. I think that the logo that I liked was I'm straight but not narrow. Yeah, and this weekend, for example, I'm going to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, complaining about all the laws that Oklahoma and other states have been trying to pass against gay marriage, and how how the type of prejudice that they're exhibiting now is, so far as I can tell, not appreciably different than racial prejudice of 20 or 30 years ago.
It's we make that analogy all the time, and I think it's a fair analogy. When my state, California, passed Proposition 8 banning gay marriage here, I think it was probably the big one across the country. California did it. I was never so ashamed of my state in my life. I couldn't wait to go to the polls and vote no on freaking Prop 8. Could not wait. As a straight man, the change had been made in me, but now I see what Prop 8 led to, and all of these other court victories across the country. Maybe kind of a blessing in disguise. So, and that was really one of the things that made me come out as an outspoken atheist about, and even an anti-theist, pointing out what the dangers are of holding those belief systems and how they do harm people. Real people are affected in the real world.
When you get the biggest danger about religious belief, and everybody wants to complain when I attack creationism, for example, they why can't I just believe what I want to believe? Well, that's fine if we're only talking about what you want to go into a corner and pretend that you're going to go visit a magic land and all of that, but that's fine. Nobody cares about your own personal delusion. But when you start enforcing it on everybody else, is when it becomes a problem. And so what we've got going on in Texas, and unfortunately I don't think California ever had to deal with this, is that they're not just messing up science class by trying to teach creationism. They're also messing up history, because they want everything to be right-wing white skin. So they've removed all ethnic references so that all of our historical heroes are all white Protestant Christian men. And they've set things up so that America always looks like a shining example of what it means to be God-blessed, as if the United States never made any mistakes, as if we had never endorsed, say, slavery or anything like that. Some school boards are now trying to argue that the United States gave up slavery voluntarily, and then there's also what they're doing to sex education, to health. They don't want teenagers to be taught anything about sex eds other than, say, abstinence only, which of course has been such a fantastic failure, as all of the religious programs tend to be. And it's ironic, I think, that so many people, especially in the southern states where religion has so much more play over politics, that these people are arguing that they want smaller government or a minimal government, and yet they want a government that is actually invasive over everybody's personal lives and their beliefs and the beliefs of their children and so forth. They
They
want
don't
the
see it like
biggest damn government that is imaginable from my perspective. The government I want, and people, they want to consider me a socialist, but the government I want is way smaller than the government that the Tea Party is trying to promote.
right. Yeah. Well, they don't see it like that, and that's why I think activism, if you know want to talk about activism, I think it's great on all of our parts because it just needs to be said. The emperor's not wearing any clothes. Okay, it needs to be said
Why is it so offensive when we say that, when we express a statement of evident truth,
because they're
or when we
conditioned.
when we state something that you cannot call a truth honestly, because it is dishonest to call something a fact that is not a fact. Would you agree with that? I mean,
Because
that's
it's been culturally taboo for so long, and we haven't changed the tide of that yet. We're changing it right now. It's becoming more acceptable to come out as openly secular, as evidenced by things like Openly Secular Day and people coming out and saying it. People hated me at first, my friends, my relatives. They didn't know whether to just cut me off or whatever. But over time, they got used to it. They got used to it because people are not used to hearing other people say it, that it's a delusion, that it's mythology, that it's superstition. They think that this is true, and they've never examined their belief system. But you know what? Culturally, our culture is changing. It's not like this. You were talking about your European tour before we went on the air. It's not like this in other parts in every part of the world, right? And it's probably different in California than it would be in the Deep South.
I would hope that it's different in California than it is in the Deep South. We have the corner market on a lot of stupidity here. Yeah, and I lived in the Los Angeles area for a while, and I remember I had met people in Hollywood and that were just an impressive level of stupidity beyond what I had ever encountered, even in rural areas. I mean, it is possible to happen. Just because you live in a city doesn't mean you're smart. But when you look statistically at a whole lot of different things that are wrong with the country, they do seem to be focused more prominent in the southern states. Texas backward through North Carolina than anywhere else in this country, and including Tennessee and Kentucky and so on.
Well, it's like Keith Lowell Jensen says, the South is anywhere more than 50 miles outside any metropolitan city. It doesn't matter where it is in the U.S. The South is 50 miles outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and 50 miles outside of Seattle, Washington, too. The metro area is the liberal area. The rural area, for the most part, is conservative. It doesn't matter where in the U.S. you're from. I grew up in the northern part of Michigan, about 100 miles from Canada, and I grew up in one of the most Republican voting counties in the U.S. 88% Bush in both elections, and that's in Michigan. So it's the ruralness that breeds the insular community of us versus them, and that often goes conservative because change is dangerous to the power that is in those tiny communities.
You said something really good, Mark, us versus them, and lately in my activism I've been trying to group myself with the people that we're talking to. Like, for example, when we set up a table on Ask an Atheist Day and we'll all wear our shirts and people come up to, I try to position myself on the same side as the believer and say, hey, listen, they're lying to us, okay? They made stuff up, and we can prove this, okay? There are errors, inconsistencies, and impossibilities in the Bible. We know how the book of Mark was changed, okay? We know how some scriptures have been changed. They're lying to us. So, getting back to the activism part and why it's so important, I think we just need to slowly change the mood of the culture of the country by saying, hey, it's okay to come out and be secular, because the first thing that the Christians, I think I was a Christian, the first thing to do is to not trust someone who doesn't believe in God because they don't have any morals, or they're somehow evil or heathens or something. We need to change that mindset, and the only way to do that is by coming out and saying, hey, listen, I'm secular. I'm openly secular. I'm an atheist. I'm not a killer. You know me. I'm a nice guy, right? I'm your friend. I've been your friend for 30 years. Oh, okay. I've seen this happen within my friends, groups of my friends who were still religious, and they still go to church and they still believe, but they're more tolerant now of atheists because of our conversations.
That's absolutely important and very true. But what happens is, just like when you have a person that is racist or is bigoted in one way, if they know one or two people that fall into the group that they normally don't like, they will just segment those people out and say, these people are this except for my friend Jim. So that's another thing that we have to overcome is, and openly secular and coming out and saying that you don't believe, and especially using the word atheist if you're an atheist is so important. But you got to keep doing it so you can bang down those walls of Jim's an atheist, but he's different because I know him. All these atheists that I don't know are eating babies by the dozens. That's the kind of thing that we got to hammer through.
Well, another problem that we have is that when you're talking about, with atheists using the word atheist when they're atheists, well, what about agnostics using the word atheist when they think they're agnostic, but they're really atheist?
Right. It's a lot of things, like the very definitions. They don't even know how an atheist self-identifies the term atheist, which is important.
The people that I've talked to because I was identified as simply an agnostic for a while, but eventually you get to the point where you realize basically everybody is agnostic on some level. No matter how much you study and how much you find that the religious writings and all these things aren't true, you get to the point of trying to prove a negative, and eventually you're like, okay, I know all these things that are written aren't true, but I don't know that everything I've never heard of is not true because I haven't heard of it, and we haven't discovered it to say it's not true yet. So everybody from Aaron to Billy Graham is agnostic of some things. But then you get to the point you say, okay, I'm agnostic, but what do I believe? Belief is inert inside yourself, and it's yes or no. It's not a I don't know. It's not a maybe. It's do you believe or do you not believe? That's it. Either you do or you don't, and then you're an atheist or you're a theist, and you move on from there.
And then they always say, but I don't know. And I say, well, nobody knows.
Right. That's not the question.
Yeah, neither you or I knows whether there's a God, but I don't believe there is one. What do you say? I don't know. What? You can't convince these people. I have one of my dearest friends in the world who said that he's not an atheist because he's not absolutely certain that there's no God. He said he's not an atheist because I'm not convinced there isn't a God. Or he says, I'm not convinced there is a God, but I'm not convinced there's not one either. I'm like, that's not even a statement. You can't be convinced that it doesn't matter if you're convinced that there's not one.
And it's a fear. That's a cop-out, and it's fear. I don't know that there's not a basketball in the middle of the moon either. I just don't believe there is one, and that's as far as we can go with it.
When you're talking about the way that people present themselves as secular, whether they're atheist or agnostic, one of the things that I want them to do is just to be skeptical. I want to promote skeptical thinking, because I know atheists who, like when a friend of mine died once upon a time, somebody who is an atheist, self-identifies as atheist, called me to assure me that he's fine, he's in peace, because he visited her and he told her so, and I had to respond and say, no, he didn't visit you. That's not possible. The brain the mind cannot exist without a brain. The personalities change when the brain is damaged, because the mind is created by the brain, and when the brain shuts down, the mind doesn't exist anymore. It's not possible to go anywhere. There is no soul, there is no afterlife, there is no spirituality. It's not possible for brains to have this energy connection between other brains, and if there was an energy connection, it would be measurable in newtons or in joules, and there's just not. And I had to be very stern, and she said, well, you're giving me a tongue lashing, and I said, no, I'm not doing this because I'm angry at you. I'm doing this because I'm angry for you, because you've been raised to believe in all of this poppycock and hooey, just as I was.
Right.
You know, and I needed somebody to tell me very bluntly that there was no global flood, for example, when I was 13 or 14 years old in middle school, and one of my teachers just shut that down right away. And I said I was confused about something about the flood, and he says, there wasn't a flood. There can't have been. It's a story. It was made up. It's not possible. And think about it, and if you just think about it for a moment, you'll know that it's not possible.
Right. You start with there wasn't a flood. The world wasn't created in 6 days. The world wasn't created 6,000 years ago. You start with those things that we know for sure didn't happen. You start with those. That breaks down and plants a seed of doubt, and eventually you get to, when you die, that's it. And that's the hardest one, I think. I think the hardest one for everyone to deal with is, when you die, that's it. That's the scariest thing.
You know, my first one was that it didn't come with any kind of authority. It didn't come with anybody with more knowledge confirming anything that I believed was right. It came, from simply being a little boy of about 12 years old and trying to read the Bible. And what came from that was that I had been lied to about what the Bible was. I was told that it was written by God. Clearly not. I was told that it was God's word. Absolutely not. That God was all wise and God is love, and God, God inspired all these stories, and so when you read it, you're expecting something along the lines of divine wisdom, and divine wisdom of any kind, cannot be found in the Bible. These are the justifications of superstitious savages trying to, trying to commit human atrocities against their neighbors, and trying to present themselves as being superior to everyone else. It's racist, it's sexist, it's superstitious, it's awful. And so I didn't get very far into it before my first question was that, certainly God could not have written the Bible, nor should any God worthy of worship even want to be associated with that horrible tome.
But we do have a few gems in the Bible. We do have, turn the other cheek and love your neighbor. I mean, you gotta go through a whole lot of manure to find those diamonds. And
even those diamonds, for example, you turn the other cheek, said by the same guy who said sell your own clothes and buy a sword, right? And then where you say love your fellow neighbor, but it's not neighbor, it's Jew. The actual translation is love your fellow Jew as yourself, because all of these were race specific. They had in the Ten Commandments, which actually is a continuous list that runs from Exodus 20 on through Exodus 24. There are a whole bunch of different commandments all strung together, and several of them are specific only to Jews. Like you have to release a Jewish slave after 7 years. The rest of them can go to hell. You can't charge interest on loans to other Jews, for example, because everything had to be preferential to this one race. And at the end, in Exodus 34, it describes that this was the covenant between God and Israel, not God and anybody else. So it's a completely racist document.
It was hard coming to the conclusion that my religion was a cult based on human sacrifice and blood magic. But there it is,
I can see where that would be a dilemma.
It's hard to accept that, right? And that's a big part of like the Zen training. Just acceptance, accept it for what it is. Don't be delusional about it. The mind plays tricks, on us. We call them, cognitive biases. We have a lot of them, as the hairless apes. But religion seems to be the default position. We want to believe in these magic and superstition, like Fox Mulder's poster on his wall. I want to believe. It seems to be the default position, and we're making a lot of headway, though. We're changing the cultural norms. Science hasn't been around that long, and look at the progress that we've made. Listen, we've been around, 200,000 years? We weren't able to farm until like 15,000 years ago. We weren't able to do reading or writing until just 5,000 years ago. We didn't have science until a couple hundred years ago. And medicine, we didn't know what killed us and what germs were and what blood types were. In the freaking Civil War, they were killing people because they didn't know about blood types. Okay, that wasn't that long ago. 150 years ago, we still had slavery. You could buy a slave in this country 150 years ago. 100 years ago, women couldn't vote. 50 years ago, blacks couldn't sit at the counter or ride in the front of the bus in some parts of the country. We've come a long way socially. We've progressed a long way in a short period of time. It just seems like a long time because, you know, we're watching it in real time. But that progress wasn't made because of religion or believing in magic or believing in the supernatural. They were made because we humans could see social scientifically the harm that certain things do to ourselves and other people in society, and we got a clue. So there's my plug for some secular morality.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my wife is half Vietnamese, or has Vietnamese ancestry, half. And when I was a kid in the 1960s, it was illegal for a white man like myself to marry an Asian woman. I could not marry anybody but a white woman. And if she was half Vietnamese, that still means half non-white. And because they had this one drop rule, it meant that if you were any degree some other race, then you were all some other race, and you were not racially pure, and therefore it was illegal to have a marriage. That was while I was alive, while you and I were alive. Right. So yeah, and I do a lot of presentations. I'm booked about once a month. Go somewhere and give a talk, and one of my upcoming presentations is going to be on that. You know, I was told, you know, my family told me that God gave us all the tools we needed to work things out on our own. But as you just said, we didn't know anything about blood types until, what, 150 years ago, if that?
Yeah.
And so what tools did we have? We didn't know what the hell a germ was, right? And we thought it was curses and witchcraft and things of that sort. So it didn't give us any kind of knowledge, nothing that would be helpful. I mean, if you look in Leviticus, for example, when they go to treat what they called leprosy, which might have been scabies for all we know, it's just some kind of itching rot. They don't specify, but it seems like an itching disease, like it could have been some kind of a flea festation kind of thing. They want to burn your house down as one of the cures. And then, okay, shaving your body, well, there's a part of the cure too, but then there's this ritual where you have to kill a bird over a bowl while under running water, and then you have to drip the blood onto another bird and release it into the field. So
blood magic.
Right, so you can include, all the five elements. You have the running water, you have the earthenware bowl, you have the wooden wand, which is what you use to sprinkle the blood onto the bird, and then you have the air where you release the bird into the air. This is a spell, and has fuck all to do with curing scabies or leprosy or any other damn thing.
It's a spell, a ritual, yeah, ritualistic spell. Yeah, and some people argue that science cannot, quantify love. Science cannot give us morals. I argue that science is exactly how we quantify love and exactly how we can have morals. It's through the social sciences, psychology, cultural anthropology, sociology. We know what harm causes to individuals, to groups of society, being degraded, okay? You think that certain groups, like blacks, like Asians, whoever, the Japanese during the wartime, okay? You think that they encountered any kind of hardships, and this goes in every direction, okay? We can prove socially, scientifically, the harm that's done, and our morals are very much tied to, we can prove scientifically, through social science, what morals are and how they affect us and society.
A very good point. Mark?
Oh, I was just kind of stuck on some of the things you were saying combined, and ultimately I feel like this is totally off base, but I was stuck on some of the things from earlier. The religion ultimately is a mixture, has been a mixture of fear of the unknown, dominance being presented by the people that are already in power, and exclusion and geography, keeping people apart. And now that we have proof that a lot of these things that people were afraid of are nothing to fear, we have proof that skin color and gender and sexual orientation are not a basis for people being lesser. And because we have the internet age and the information age that are bringing people together and knowledge together, religion is losing on all three fronts. And
But you
that's
know what they're winning in? This is a disturbing thing. Yeah, we like to brag that we're the fastest growing demographic with respect to religion, you know, the nuns, and specifically the atheists are rising faster than anybody else. But the thing is that religion still is winning in one respect. They're still controlling the school boards because nobody goes to an election when it's not for the damn president. Nobody looks up who's on the Board of Education. So the boards of education in the various states are controlling all of that, and they've done it. They've done a bang-up job on diffusing real information and teaching kids what to believe and what to
they
believe
have,
in order to control how they vote.
I agree with you, and that is slowing down the growth of free thought, but it's not winning, it's just slowing. And I agree that people need to get more involved in their local elections and learn and talk to and listen to what's being taught in their kids' schools, but ultimately the information available to people is winning even that battle, because kids are still looking things up outside of their home. They're looking up things outside of their church communities. They're looking and they're finding people like yourself and like Dillahunty and Seth and all these people that are saying these things that they can latch onto that are outside of their network. And you can see that because of the Hotline Project with Recovering from Religion. All of these people are calling in from all over the country, and they're saying, everyone in my circle is saying this, but this is what I'm seeing on the internet. This is why I'm doubting. So I agree with you that the local elections are very important, and getting into the schools and the kind of things that you and your wife are doing about trying to battle against the boards of education is important. But I think even that stuff is just slowing down the tide of information. And ultimately, the access to the people that are saying and doing the right things is what's really making a difference.
Well, that's also why they're hotly against secondary education. They don't want there to be...
Right, exactly.
They don't want people going to college. You know, they really don't want anybody going to school at all. You know, unless it's a private Christian school where they can teach them exactly what they want them to believe. Otherwise, they don't want education. They don't want a learned mass of people who understand things, because people who understand things and know how to think critically aren't going to be easily manipulated. So, Jim,
they don't want them to go to the college and then join the Secular Student Alliance, for goodness sakes.
Okay, so what can you or let me, before I put too much on this, is there anything else you can say to promote what the Secular Student Alliance does, or why it's a valuable organization to join or support?
I think it's just putting some faces out there. I think it's just putting some handshakes out there, just meeting some people, pressing the flesh, and talking to people. Every time we go out, every time we've got our material, our tracks, if you will, on why evidence-based thinking is so important, and people come up and they talk to us, and we wear the Ask an Atheist t-shirts, and a lot of people have never really seen an atheist. Is that what an atheist looks like? Oh my God.
Do not use me as a typical example.
They've got some good questions, and it's just like anywhere else. It's just like anything else. A lot of them want to engage in honest dialogue, and a lot of them don't, right? They want to preach or say, "Oh, God's," and we get into that whole thing. So, which is fun sometimes too, but I guess one of the main things main complaints that I have against religion is, the wretched thing that they teach. You're no good. You're nothing but a worthless, wretched piece of crap. Without God, you deserve to be eternally punished, and this is because you're no good. You talk to any psychologist or counselor or psychiatrist, telling somebody that they're completely wretched and utterly worthless by a father figure in this, whoever, it's not healthy for them. It's bad for them, and this is, I think, one of the scars that I carry from my Christian upbringing.
And that premise right there points to what I was talking about earlier, the domination by the people in charge. If you tell kids that they are worthless and that they've made an error, what are they going to do? They're going to look to the person they trust to tell them how to fix that. And
No, that wasn't the case for me. I was no, I was raised with some very negative reinforcement. I was told at various points in my youth that it didn't matter what I wanted to do or what I tried to do, because I was never going to be worth anything, no matter what.
Right. And that's the lie. I mean, that, and it's, it's fear mongering. It's kept in place by fear, and that's what religion, at least Christianity, from what I've encountered, is basically fear mongering, and from a person who has an advanced degree in communication and has studied propaganda and rhetoric quite intensely and has made those commercials for decades. I can tell you that fear is our most powerful ally. If I can get you scared, I can sell you something. Are your children safe? There are predators in the area, lurking around parks, lurking around schools. Are your children in danger? Tonight on Channel 13, we'll discover how you can keep your kids safe. I just want to scare you, then I have you. It's the hook of religion. If you don't have this, you go to hell. If we've got the cure, you're sick, here's the thing. It's plain flat out fear mongering is what it is. Marketing 101. I scare you, I have the sale.
Yeah, and that's been a big issue with me, is the people that are afraid when it seems to be that fear is the issue that's doing the most damage. I don't understand people that not only have to lock their doors, but also have to set up all these different alarm systems, and then also have to sit behind a battery of guns and all of these other security measures and motion detectors and all of that. I mean, why go through those extremes? Especially if you're 6'4" and martial artist at the same time as all of them. What the hell are you afraid of?
There are a lot of studies.
What are the chances that things are really going to be that bad? I mean, people are afraid of everything that way. I saw this beautiful poster. I love this because it said that more Americans have been married to Kim Kardashian than have died of Ebola. A very important statistic.
That's awesome. Well, it's fear, man, and there are plenty of studies that link the correlation between how much media you watch, especially news, especially things like Fox News, to how scared you are of everything and paranoid. They call it scary world syndrome. There's even a name for it. Okay, and that's the more you watch, Fox. Oh, are you safe? Oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're after this. It seeps into your unconscious, and there are many correlation studies we have that demonstrate this. Watching that kind of stuff is not good for people. So.
Yeah, I want to take this moment to acknowledge a friend of mine, a friend I've had for a quarter of a century or so, who died this last weekend. And I just want to make a word about him, because when you're talking about fear, this was a guy that wasn't afraid of anything. I was really impressed with him, because he said he had this truck that he was pissed off that people kept trying to break into his truck. And he said he'd left the doors unlocked, but people would still break in. They'd still bash out his windows and break into his truck. So there was no way to advertise, hey, the doors are not locked, don't break in my windows. So he just removed the doors. So he's driving around a 4x4 Pathfinder with no doors, just because that's the only way he can keep his stuff from not being destroyed when people try to steal from him.
I think I saw a guy like that one time that had the same phenomena to him, where he has a car broken a few times, and he just taped on all the windows, doors not locked. Go ahead and look through my shit if you want. Just don't break my windows.
That's a tough neighborhood, man.
Yeah, and of course my problem, people see my bumper stickers and then they just want to break my windows. So it doesn't matter if I lock my doors or not. They don't want to steal from inside my truck. They just want to smash the windows out so that it costs me money for being an atheist. All right, Mark, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I was going to say, it must be the life of an atheist in Texas is certainly a different character. That's why we had the episode a couple weeks ago about atheism in the South. Everybody knows, watches the show. Shannon and I live in Maryland, And even though it's south of the Mason-Dixon and there are some conservative areas more than 50 miles away from the metro area, but for the most part, it's pretty liberal here. I mean, I have the Maryland license plate, Godless, G0DLESS, and I've never had any vandalism or any kind of kickback, and I've had it for like 10 years. Wow. So living in the South with an atheist sticker is worse than having literally the most atheist license plate you can have, basically, because I've never had an issue.
Yeah, it's funny that when I'm driving around with those bumper stickers on, I never get any kind of trouble, except once when I was driving through Louisiana. There was a little trouble there, but when my wife drives, then she gets people, yelling at her through the window, flipping her off, whatever, because of the same thing. And I have to really. I mean,
Aaron, you're a little bit scarier looking than Lalandra, just a little.
We're talking about road rage, though. I mean, well, so much for that. All right, so Jim, what else can you tell me about yourself, your activism, and your organization?
Well, I look forward to another exciting semester. Not sure what it has in store or who we plan on bringing. Maybe you could come to Sacramento. Have you been to Sacramento before?
I don't think I ever have.
Okay, well maybe we'll work on that. I don't know, but
I'm not doing anything in December.
That's where Keith Little Jensen is. You guys can get together.
But I'm sold on the Secular Student Alliance. I mean, I've never been in a club in high school or college or anything. This is my first club ever, and I mean, I look forward to the meetings once a week, and we get a lot of work done. And sometimes we just it's as simple as us just going out, and holding our meeting out in the middle of the quad and wearing our shirts and just talking to people about what we believe and we field every question that comes along. What are you promoting? You're not in pro. Well, you can't feel the negative. Well, we're actually promoting critical thinking and how important it is, and secular values and how important those are, the separation of church and state. Oh, okay. And then we can engage in some kind of discourse. So
and real morality as opposed to some artificial morality imposed by an authority, which can arbitrarily go back and switch back again from saying thou shalt not kill to suddenly kill every man and his brother.
And real morality, once again, let me come back to this point, that we can prove is moral because it harms a lot less people or helps more people, and we can prove that social scientifically with tests of correlations, chi-squares. We've got lots of data for a lot of years, and we can prove what is harmful and what is not harmful and how that ties into morality, and that is scientific.
Jim, this is not a question that I probably should ask, but I'm just super curious. Are you the oldest person in your group?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
is it mostly a young group?
It's probably pretty diverse. We don't have any like 19-year-olds in there. I think most of the people are in their probably 20s and 30s. We have some people who are not. I don't think there are any teenagers.
Are not currently students? Are they just alums or?
No, they're students, but they're not. We don't have any. I don't think we have any teenagers.
Do you have a significant number of returning students?
Probably a significant number of returning students. So, yeah, I think I am the oldest in the group.
You may have already said, but which college is it?
It's Sacramento City College. It's a community college in Sacramento. Sacramento City College.
That probably lends itself to more returning students, more working adults, and things like that than like, say, Berkeley. You know what I mean? Something like that, where there's going to be more younger kids.
Yeah, I can attest to that because when I went back as a returning student, I certainly went back to a community college rather than going to a university. I mean, the difference in price in classes was tenfold. So paying $150 for a class versus $1,500 for a class, that makes a huge difference. And that is the difference I was looking at when for chemistry between the college that I went to and the university in this area. That really was the price difference.
Yeah. Oh, one thing that we have with our group, the Sacramento Club, is our band that we're really happy about, and we perform at some of our events in front of the events, and we do Imagine by John Lennon, and we have our our leader is he's a graphic, or what is it, faculty advisor. He teaches graphic arts there. So he made these really nice graphic posters with all the imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try, and so people can read along with the very powerful words of John Lennon and see nice pictures while we perform the thing. And then we have an original song called "Beware the Jewish Zombie," which Dan Barker thought it was. He said it was really great. So. One of these times, maybe we're hoping to make a video and like promote that and record the song too. So we have a band. We have a band and we're called Baby Feast! !
Okay, well that makes sense. I wanted to write a song for a while, which I may end up doing, which is just where you list off a number of the things that the religious right likes to promote. The world was made 6,000 years ago, and all of these types of idiotic beliefs. And then just when you string all of these ridiculous things together, you then put it under the song title of "What a Fool Believes."
You know what? That's another great song idea would be to get all the things, all the great questions that they ask. Well, where do your morals come from? If you don't believe in God, then how are you why don't you just go on a killing spree and rape everybody that you see?
Why is exactly the reverse always the case when somebody comes out of religious belief? Why is it they become more tolerant, less hateful? Statistically, this is true, less likely to support capital punishment, less likely to support torture. Why are we more peaceful, more tolerant, and more reasonable when we come out of religious belief than when we were in it, if that's the case?
Because you came out of the matrix. You came out of the matrix of delusion. You see things as they are, and because of that, you're free to follow real morality, real secular morality.
That's absolutely right. It's once you leave that dogma, you automatically, like instantly, once you shuck that, you're like, okay, really, how would I like to be treated as a person? I think, and you push that outward. You say, I wouldn't want someone judging me. I wouldn't want someone taking things from me. And you really start to feel empathy and compassion for others based on your own feelings, I think. You're not being controlled by something that tells you how you should feel because this. You really feel, and you really start to use that to dictate how you treat other people, I think.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Mark, yeah.
I was going to say that the mainstream religion may be relatively tame, but it tends to be controlled more by the extremes. And in extreme religion, you're taught to believe in dichotomies, right? Everything is black or white, everything is good or bad, and that's where you get the tribalism. You get the us versus them, and the right versus wrong, and so forth. And just to remind everybody is that most of the great advocates that we have of science and reason and so forth and secularism have come from within the believers' fold. They're, where people say, well, you're never going to change the mind of believers, but almost all of the non-believers today were once believers whose minds did change, and so there are rational arguments. And it all comes down to, and I think you mentioned this before, whether it matters more that you believe what you want to believe or whether you understand what is really true. And you said you had this epiphany where you wanted to be honest.
Right. And
that to me seems to make the difference.
Very well put. Yeah,
Matt,
I think honesty is the key.
Matt Dillahunty, and I think Aaron, I know you've heard it 100 times. It was one of the biggest and most impactful quotes I've ever heard. And that's a huge statement because I've been in the community a long time and I've listened to a lot of stuff. When Matt said to a caller on the Atheist Experience probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer than that, he said, the type of world you want to live in has no bearing on the type of world you do live in. That shook me to the core when I heard that. Not because I was a believer, but because it made so much sense of why other people do the type of shit they do. And I'll never forget that quote. And that's exactly what you just said, Aaron.
Well, thank you very much. That's probably a reason that me and Matt hang out. All right, well, Jim, I'm gonna let you give closing words as we finish up this tonight. Is there any last thing you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Secular Student Alliance. I think it's a great club and a great organization. And like I said, over 400 campuses, over 400 groups, and a great place to go and kind of pass along, just commune and just talk about it. I mean, there's a lot of energy there that and a lot of activism, just being around people, like-minded individuals. And if people ever want to get past this veil of religion, like I was trapped in this veil of religion where I only saw the world through a certain, perspective, but maybe, words like we're talking were like drops of rain that slowly wore through that, and finally, I got to a point where I abandoned the religion and saw truth. The truth does set you free from delusion, from this perspective of dogma. So, yeah, it's been a good experience.
And the only thing I could add to that is, yes, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off.
Oh, it's painful to go through it at the time, but later on you can look back and go, wow, I'm glad I went through that. So,
all right.
Thank you so much.
And Jim, thank you. Mark as well, and all our supporters and subscribers on Patreon, thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and close it down. Good night, everybody.